are on your forefront, and you've been advocates for us, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Heather?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see you. Mr. Chairman, my father was born and raised in Idaho, so it's nice to see you. And Ranking Member, I'm delighted you're here, especially that you're on the Agriculture Committee, which overlaps so much with this. My name is Heather Dawn Thompson. I'm a citizen of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe of Dakota, and I'm the Vice President of Native Nations, both conservation and food systems at the World Wildlife Fund. And I'm here today to talk about tribal buffalo, and also want to honor my partners here in salmon in the same way that salmon and fish are so important to our tribes on the coast. Buffalo is our primary food source in the Great Plains, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, et cetera, down to Oklahoma and further. World Wildlife Fund has worked with tribal nations for nearly 2 decades in this space, the whole range from intertribal partners like the Intertribal Buffalo Council, Coalition of Large Tribes. We also support individual tribes like the Wolakota Buffalo Herd in Rosebud, many people are familiar with, as well as the Fort Peck facility in Montana, and then bigger national partners like the Nature Conservancy and Native Americans in Philanthropy in this space. And in many cases, the tribal governments are the lead compass for us in conservation in the United States, and certainly for us at World Wildlife Fund. They are some of our most important partners. So I'm really pleased to be able to speak in support of their needs today. Our written testimony goes into more detail about the FY26, but we think this is a relatively small investment for a very significant impact. We're hoping in this challenging budget to at least maintain the current funding that's going to the Intertribal Buffalo Council, which is about $2.5 million that goes directly to tribal buffalo herds. And then we also would love to see report language that of the money that's going to the Office of Trust Services for Natural Resources, that $25 million of that be directed towards grasslands and buffalo work, which is it's more than what's going now, but be really clear about that. And then we want to thank you and support you in your allocation from last year's budget for the $8 million in the Land and Water Conservation Fund towards tribal land acquisition, and hope that you keep that moving forward. But in addition to the FY26, we're here to support our tribal partners in there's seeking to unfreeze the 25 appropriations that you've already allocated and invested. And my written testimony is really specific about those programs. I list them out grant by grant, program by program, both in USDA and in the Department of Interior. But it's quite significant. At the Department of Interior, it amounts to about $18 million that's frozen right now. At USDA, it's even more significant. It's almost $67 million that's frozen right now, predominantly in the RCPP program. And this is the most significant investment ever in the history in tribal buffalo, and it's all frozen right now. I think one of the challenges that folks don't realize is because the United States has invested so heavily in a very important cattle industry, it's sort of inadvertently left buffalo out because buffalo are different, right? They require different infrastructure. And so investments in tribal buffalo are new, and they're using new funds and new sources. And so unfortunately, that disproportionately means IRA and bill. And so when IRA and bill specifically are frozen, it's disproportionately impacting tribes and disproportionately impacting tribal buffalo. And so, one of the questions of all these different priorities you have to juggle right now, why tribal buffalo, why tribal salmon, but they're all integrated, right? And this is a really relatively low investment to help with all of the ills that you've just heard beforehand. First, agriculture is a really significant treaty obligation. In addition to the specific fish treaties that you were just hearing about, there are at least 226 tribal treaties that have agriculture-specific provisions in them that are promising the United States support in agriculture in return for the lands, et cetera. Second, buffalo are really essential to tribal economies, especially in the grass states. They're grass-based economies, right? These buffalo are the best grassland land managers. A recent study from Kansas State found that buffalo are 100% more effective at healthy grass than ungrazed lands, and 50% more than cattle grazed. And most of the Great Plains economies, many of you heard from them on Tuesday, most of those Great Plains economies, they're grass-based economies. Their money comes from grazing income. So you have to have healthy soil, healthy grass. And then third, buffalo are really essential for tribal health and food, as are salmon in this region. Buffalo are incredibly healthy. The meat are incredibly healthy. And they're part of the big picture to fight diabetes, just like salmon. Getting back to our indigenous foods is one of the most important ways to stop those health issues. And in addition, buffalo are extremely hardy. With the changing weather patterns, we're seeing really negative impacts on our agriculture and ranching industries. And these guys are just fine. They've been through it all, right? And so this is important, I think, not only from a tribal food sovereignty perspective, but really, frankly, from a national food security perspective. We need animals that can handle these changing conditions. But as important as economic sufficiency and food security are, spirituality and culture, much like salmon, are totally intertwined for tribal nations. After the buffalo reached almost extinction, it was really the tribal nations that came forward and have been restoring the buffalo for over a century, many times on their own. And for me, this is particularly personal because my great-great-great-grandfather, Fred Dupree, this is Fred, and my great-great-grandmother, Mary Good-Elk Woman, are one of a handful of families that are credited with saving the buffalo. So I take my obligations very seriously. So in conclusion, really appreciate any help. I know it's a hard situation, but in your conversations with Burgum and hopefully with the Secretary of Agriculture, really implore them to help unfreeze these 25 funds for the tribes. Like I said, this is the first time ever these have been made. And I'm honored here to support our tribal partners and our relative, the buffalo. And as we say in Lakota, mitakuye oyasin, which means we are all related and our fates are intertwined. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you.